All right. So we're here live at Geekdom today for our CivTechSA Spotlight with our residency company, Rubicon. We're really excited to have our guests on here with us today to tell you a little bit more about what they're doing in our residency program and what Rubicon is all about. So we're just going to wait another minute or two just to let some folks hop into the live stream, and then we'll kind of really get the show started. Hopefully everyone's having an awesome Friday. It's quite a beautiful day here in San Antonio. The weather's been, getting not quite as stifling hot lately, kind of getting that little taste of what our fall season is kind of like here. So that's really nice. And of course it's Friday, so we got the weekend coming up. So it's a nice time to have a lunchtime conversation and kind of ease into our weekend with hopefully some really cool new information and getting to know more people in our community. So, all right. And for those of you who are getting tuned in right now, my name's Leslie Chasnoff, and I am a program manager here at Geekdom. And one of the wonderful programs I get to manage and work on here is CivTechSA. And if CivTechSA is something that's kind of new to you or you don't know too much about it, it's a partnership between the City of San Antonio's Office of Innovation and Geekdom. And its mission is to really connect our students, entrepreneurs, companies, our community to the city and grow civically minded tech talent. And we do that through many different pillars of our programming. So we have our educational programming that really focuses on presenting civic challenges for students to work on through project-based learning modules. So they kind of get a challenge that the city's working on and get to spend time researching it and coming up with super cool ideas around how to solve it, and sometimes even beginning to build out the technology for it. So that's really exciting and awesome. They're getting exposure to not only learning about the city and kind of what things it does for all of us as residents, but also thinking about how they can better their community in this innovative way, which is very cool. And we host different entrepreneurial events throughout the year. We have a datathon. We usually do a codathon, startup weekends that are focused on smart city tech and that kind of thing. And then one of our coolest parts of the program, I think, is our residency program. And so that is kind of why we're here today. Our residency program is a 16-week program where companies apply. They go through a formal process with the city to apply for this program. There's specific city challenges that are selected for this that are pretty technical and pretty enormous challenges to tackle, I will say. And so the cities apply. I mean, the startups or companies apply to the city's challenges to tackle them. And if they're selected, they get to work with that city department for 16 weeks to build out a custom solution to that problem that they're solving, that challenge. And so we're joined today with two of the rock stars from Rubicon. So Rubicon is one of two teams that is currently in the CivTech residency program. And we're actually about to get into our very last week of the residency this year. So next week is the final week, official week of the CivTech residency in 2020. We have our demo day coming up for these two teams on Tuesday, September 29th. It will be virtual. We're really looking forward to showing off all the hard work they've put into the last 16 weeks. And it'll be 7 p.m. on Facebook Live. It'll be through the CivTech channel. So everyone tune in for that. The registration is open on Eventbrite. If you want to go check that out and get signed up, we're really excited to share everything they've been working on with our community. So with that, we'll get started with our lunchtime discussion today. So I have with us, we have Tyler Molinaro and Connor Rifle. So if you guys want to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about what it is you do for Rubicon.
Cool. Well, I'll go first. This is Connor Riffle. I'm the VP of Smart Cities at Rubicon, and I oversee our our partnerships team and our customer success team as we build a next generation smart city product focused on the waste and recycling space. So I'll tell you a little bit more about Rubicon in a minute, but I'll throw it over to Tyler.
Yeah, thanks, Connor. My name is Tyler Molinaro. I'm a senior manager on the Smart Cities team here at Rubicon, and I've had the pleasure of working with the folks at Geekdom and with the city of San Antonio and the CivTech Residency for the last almost 16 weeks now. So, we're excited to share more with the public and, more to come even after this. So hopefully everyone stays tuned.
Awesome. Thank you guys for introducing yourselves. Yeah, so smart city tech, I know that's kind of like a word that sometimes gets thrown around, the smart city thing. So I think that what you guys do is a really clear illustration of that. That's like a little bit easier for someone to get their head around as like an example of what smart city technology really is. So I'm super excited for you guys to share your overview of Rubicon. So Connor, do you want to share with everyone a little bit more about what it is you do?
Sure. Well, we can't wait to talk about it. We always love talking about smart cities and about waste with folks. So thank you, Leslie, and Geekdom for the platform to do so. Let me just start with who Rubicon is, and then we can kind of get into what we're doing in San Antonio and some of the work we do specifically with cities. Rubicon is a technology company. We're really born and bred in the waste and recycling space. So we've started now, we're a startup, but we're kind of an older startup. We were founded about 11 years ago now. We're based in Atlanta, Georgia. And our main product, the kind of the core of our business is really a technology business focused on the commercial waste and recycling space. So what we do is we actually serve large Fortune 500 companies and help them manage their waste and recycling portfolios. So we actually manage the waste and recycling portfolios for many of the brands that you know and love. So we manage, for example, every Walmart in the country, every 7-Eleven in the country. And what we do is we help them reduce the amount of money that they spend on their waste and recycling services, primarily by converting more of their waste away from landfill, which they have to pay for, to recycling, which they get paid to do. And recycling these recycling commodities have a value. So we help these companies manage that, and in doing so, we help them with their sustainability journey as they convert that waste away from landfill and towards recycling. We don't actually own any waste vehicles, so we're different from a lot of the other waste and recycling companies that you may have heard of or worked with. We don't actually own our own vehicles. We partner with local independent haulers to actually service our big name brand customers. And we actually serve as kind of the connector between those big brands and these independent haulers. A lot of the independent haulers we work with are small and medium-sized businesses. They're often the local hauler that you might have in your community. And we partner with those folks to actually serve and carry out our mission. Other really important thing about Rubicon is that we're a B Corp. So for those who don't know, a B Corp is a benefit corporation, and it means that in addition to being just a normal company that's focused on making a profit, we actually have a social and environmental mission. And our social and environmental mission is to end waste. So it's a big mission. It's one that we take very seriously and that we really is in the day-to-day of everything that we do. But it's really carried out in the work that we do to help companies and cities, which I'll talk about in a minute, reduce their overall waste footprint. So I'll just speak really quickly about the other piece of our business, which is our smart city work. It really came out of the work that we do on the commercial side. So one of the things that you might imagine that happens as we're working with a lot of these small and medium-sized independent haulers is that we want to know when they've serviced our customers. And so we actually built technology to go into the vehicles that are servicing our customers so that everybody would know, okay, when did the trash get picked up in this particular location? And that technology has been very successful and has worked out really well. And we were looking for new markets for that technology. And one of the key markets that we found is city governments that own their own waste and recycling vehicles. About half of the municipal governments in the U.S. Actually own and run their own fleets, their own waste and recycling fleets, primarily for picking up residential and some commercial waste. And so our technology, we actually built into a product that we call Rubicon Smart City. And that product helps municipal governments that own their own waste and recycling vehicles operate their waste and recycling vehicles more efficiently, helps them run those programs more efficiently, helps them save taxpayer money and provide better customer service. That's really the core of Rubicon Smart City and what we do. And our work with the city of San Antonio is directly in that same lane as we work to end waste and fulfill our mission. So I'll stop there, and we can kind of get more into detail here, Leslie, here in a moment. But that's a kind of a good high level overview of Rubicon and our smart city work.
Amazing. I think that I know whenever I was looking originally, like when I started, the first week I started in the position managing CivTech was the week we were launching the residency. So you guys are one of the first people I got to talk to and work with and hear about what you were doing. And this mission to end waste, I mean, that's huge, that's massive. And also at a time where, you know, climate change is at the top of everyone's minds these days, you know, especially recently. I think this is such an important thing to be tracking towards, and the fact that Rubicon is putting that at the top of everything you're doing, that's why you're doing what you're doing. I think that's so inspiring and so wonderful. So, you know, Tyler, do you want to kind of expand a little bit more about the inspiration for this mission for Rubicon to end waste and kind of how you're really uniquely doing that with all of your smart city tech?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great point, and Connor alluded to it a little bit. Us being positioned as a B Corp, we are quite different than, you know, a typical corporation, if you will. And you know, we think of ending waste quite broadly. Obviously, being in the waste industry, it's very easy to push that into just the solid waste bucket. But being that we're also working in technology and working with people and city governments and businesses alike, you know, we also see that as human capital, financial capital, all of these things that can potentially be wasted. We want to find ways to reduce that or eliminate it altogether. And particularly when we're speaking about solid waste, right? And given that, you know, the challenge that San Antonio released was find a way to essentially remove waste from a recycling stream, which we can dive into a little bit more about how that impacts both the city, the residents, and the stream itself here in a little bit. But the goal was effectively to remove waste from a stream. We couldn't think of a more perfect alignment in terms of our vision and what we're trying to do with technology, and then also what the city is looking to accomplish by finding a technology partner. So it seemed like a perfect fit on paper, and like I said, you know, we've been beyond thrilled to be working with the city this entire time. They've been above and beyond a partner to help us develop this technology. And I think, you know, like I said, in the coming weeks, when the demo day comes, the community will get to see what we've done. And, you know, hopefully here we can speak a little bit about those impacts. But yeah, like I said, our mission to end waste, again, beyond just solid waste, but when we're speaking in terms of what we've done with the city of San Antonio, it couldn't have been a more perfect match.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess to give an overview to those watching too, the challenge that Rubicon is working on for the CivTech Residency program is to create a new tool that would detect different pieces of waste coming in through the recycling. So basically these fancy little cameras capturing and automatically through an artificial intelligence approach saying, oh, like that's not supposed to be in there, flagging it, and that will help us improve and educate our residents as well as the drivers, everyone that's part of the process of recycling in our city. Just help us get to a better system for that, and be more educated and on top of fixing the problems that can really cause a lot of issues down the road through that whole process. So super excited about that. Tyler, do you want to also talk a little bit more about different things that Rubicon has done in the past with your smart city technology, things that are in other cities right now, just kind of a little bit more getting in the nerdy techie side of everything you guys do?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll try to keep it as layman as possible and simple as possible, but effectively, our core product that you probably heard Connor allude to earlier is effectively two pieces. Something that plugs into the OBD port, and for those who don't know what that is, it's the place when you go to take your car to like an AutoZone or a garage. They plug it in there and it reads the diagnostics of your car. Your car is basically a giant rolling computer. So something goes into that port, and then the drivers have an iPhone or an iPad, a mobile smart device, preloaded with Rubicon's proprietary mobile app. And all of those kind of work together. And then they're sending information in near real time back to what we call a portal, which is, again, just a password protected website for the managers and city supervisors to go into. And the goal behind this is it's layered, but effectively we're looking to make both the drivers' jobs easier, protecting them in the field, ensuring that, they have proof effectively of doing their job, right? So one of the biggest issues in cities is, trash, and whether it's being picked up on time. If there are residents who typically call in a lot because their streets were missed, or, they're littering and their streets are messy because they're not setting it out to the curb correctly. The drivers basically have the tools to capture this on a resident level, identify an issue, and again, report that back for review from a city insight perspective. Additionally, there's a lot of improvements that cities can use the portal for in terms of routing, improving the efficiency. Again, now we're talking about reducing miles, reducing fuels, lowering the effect of your CO2 or your carbon footprint by making your operations more efficient. Again, this goes back to ending waste, finding ways to make operations, to make people, to make machines work better in a situation to lower your impact on the environment. So in a very small, condensed explanation, that is what we're doing with over 50 cities across the U.S. and, a few sprinkled outside of the continental U.S. So, Connor, feel free if I missed anything there, or you feel like you can add some, I welcome it. But I think, like I said, for over 50 cities across the U.S., that's what we've been doing for the last 3 years. And we've expanded a little bit on that as we work with some of our newer generation tech with the city of San Antonio.
I'll just add a couple of factoids about why waste in cities is so important. So often collecting the trash in a city is often one of the top 5 costs that a city faces. So if you think about that, these cities have enormous budgets. And one of the top line items in those budgets is sending a truck around to every single home every week to collect the trash. And that makes sense because as you think about it, a garbage truck costs about $300,000 each. And then you got to pay a crew to drive it around literally to every single person's door in the city once a week. Very, very, very expensive. And in a time of constrained budgets, in a time where cities across the country are trying to make do with less, running the most efficient solid waste operation that you can save you significant money. There's real money to be saved in these cities. And that's what our technology focuses on. We track everything that the city is doing with their operation so that we can recommend ways to improve that and to make it more efficient. And the technology can actually tell you how to make that operation more efficient. So it's very, very important. And then I just want to say one other thing about recycling contamination, because Leslie, you mentioned, one of the reasons we're talking to the city is because the city is trying to figure out how to handle recycling contamination. Recycling contamination is a really, really important topic. In the US, only about the recycling rate on average is only about 34%. So that means that of the things that could be recycled, only about 34% of those are making it into the recycling stream. The rest are going to landfill. So there's estimates right now that says 40 to 60% of what's in a landfill could have been recycled. So we're putting all this recyclable material into the landfill. So in addition, what you have is China. A lot of the recycling that we did collect, that 34%, a lot of that has been going to China. But China's recently closed their doors. So that's meant that there's been a surplus. There's been all this additional recyclable material available in the US. And that means that the price of these commodities has gone down. If cities want to make sure that they have a good market for the recyclable materials, so that they sell those on, they collect them at everybody's house, and then they sell them on to become raw materials for manufacturing of new goods, the city has to make sure that those recyclable materials are clean. They have to make sure that what's in the recycling bin is clean. It's just the recyclables. This is very, very important because there's so much out there now. There's so much surplus in America because China closed its doors that only the cleanest, least contaminated recycling is going to find a market. People are going to get paid to sell that on. So that is why recycling contamination is so critical. And that's why city governments and the work that they're doing to make their solid waste operations more efficient is so critical. So those are two really important pieces of background of why we're here. Why are we working with the city of San Antonio? Why are we working on this issue? It's because there's real money involved that can impact the bottom line of cities across the country, the city of San Antonio included.
And just to build a little bit on what Connor's talking about with the struggles, not just that cities are having with recycling, but large enterprise corporations as well. Again, the market has been flooded. Cities, were once being paid to give their recyclables to these markets. It's now at a point where they're operating at a loss and are being faced with a real decision on whether they continue recycling in their community. And I would imagine that most, regardless of what side you're on, understand that recycling is a good thing for the environment. So if you're a person who cares about the environment, understanding the impact that removing recycling from a city the size of San Antonio or other cities in Texas that are quite large, that's a real impact that you're having, not just in your community, but to our world and our country as a whole. So, these are the battles that cities like San Antonio are trying to confront. And, you have to applaud the city of San Antonio for looking at technology for a way to help take on this battle of recycling contamination and broader, just finding ways to maintain their recycling operations.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for both of those pieces that really kind of illustrated that bigger picture for us all of why this is so important and critical and kind of how it works with the cities, right? These systems are quite complicated, really, and a lot of us aren't educated in this space because it's pretty specific. And I know that for me, like learning that and hearing that, I think that there was a presentation too I got to see with some folks from solid waste that really broke down how recycling works and understanding like just that whole system. And being educated on that makes me so much better about how I manage my waste at home. And so thinking about it at the larger scale of the city is just, wow, it's just so intense. But I do think that, again, like the work that you guys are doing with the city also helps them educate residents through the ways that they can, say, oh, look, these few blocks like seem to be having a lot of contamination issues. Maybe we need to send out some flyers or stick some flyers on that remind them of the things that can and can't go into the green bin or the blue bin or whatever, So I think that that piece of it is really exciting to me because I'm always trying to do better when it comes to my waste and recycling and identifying how I can be better about all those things. So I also totally wish or someday that you guys could create like little bins for us at home that could be like don't put that in there just from the start, because that would also help me much. That'd be super cool. But yeah, so I also want to hear a little bit more about Rubicon, because every company starts off as a little tiny startup and grows. And here at Geekdom, we're all about building new startup companies and helping them on their path to grow into larger companies. So I'd love to hear, I think, Connor, if you want to talk a little bit perhaps about kind of the growth of Rubicon, where it started, how you guys got to where you are today, some of the things you've gone through along the way?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to. And I'll just kind of break it into two phases, right? Because our first phase was really growing the commercial waste and recycling business that we founded in 2008. Really, the original impetus behind Rubicon, and that business has grown. It's matured. We're now one of the largest waste and recycling companies in the U.S. And we have a global footprint as well. So that business now at 11 years in is very robust and very mature, and it's been a phenomenal ride to present to the market an alternative to what in the U.S. is effectively a landfill model. And I'll just explain that really briefly, and then I'll talk about Smart City and kind of where we're at on that side of the business and our journey there. But the landfill model is kind of the dominant model in America right now, and the major waste management companies that are out there, many of them own landfills. So they're vertically integrated. They do everything from the collection of waste and recycling at the storefront or the residential level, all the way through the transportation of that, and then to the landfill to put that material in the landfill. So that model has effectively incentivized most of the waste to go into landfills. Our model and the mission that Rubicon was founded with is a little different. Because we don't own landfills, because we don't own any vehicles, we're actually in a position to help companies save money by reducing the amount of waste that they send to landfill. So that's really, really important, because when we're thinking about incentives in the market, the incentive for us is to help the company save as much money as possible. And the best way to save money on waste is to just reduce the amount of waste that you put away. So that incentive and that alignment of incentives has been one of the between us being successful and reducing waste away from landfill. That alignment of incentives has really been kind of, I think, the key to our success at Rubicon and the key to our rapid growth over the last 10 years. Rubicon Smart City, the next side of our business, think of it as kind of a startup within the larger Rubicon company. We're actually only a few years old now. As Tyler mentioned, we've been rolled out in about 50 cities across the U.S. And so, in the grand scheme of things, we're still kind of in the first phase of our journey. And it's one of the reasons why our engagement with Geekdom in the city of San Antonio has been so helpful and critical, because we are still at the phase where we are developing technology, where we are figuring out what works and what doesn't. We're figuring out what the limits of technology are. So that's kind of where we're at in our phase. Our growth and our kind of origin story really came out of this core mission to end waste that Rubicon has. When we looked at other markets with this technology that we had developed for commercial haulers, when we looked at where we could, where the markets are for that, the one that really stood out to us as being a place where we could really make a difference in ending waste was with municipal governments that own their own fleet. So we were very intentional about that choice, because it was such a good alignment with our mission. I mentioned just how impactful a more efficient municipal waste operation can be in terms of the budget line, but also in terms of people's day-to-day satisfaction, their day-to-day quality of life, and the sanitation, the cleanliness, and that the public health of the folks in the city. So those are all really important reasons why we're in the municipal government space. And as Tyler mentioned, we're thinking about waste differently now than we did 10 years ago. Before, we thought about it only in terms of solid waste. Now we're thinking about it in terms of solid waste, but also in terms of wasted time. How can we minimize the amount of time that these public sector employees aren't actually picking up the trash? They don't want to be working extra. We don't want them to be working extra. How can we make sure that they can do their job as efficiently and as safely as possible? So that's a big thing. Wasted, taxpayer dollars, right? If maybe the city, as part of kind of what's happened over the last, whatever it is, 30 years since they've really looked at their solid waste operation, maybe they're doing a lot of go backs where a resident will call and say they missed their can. How can we help them with that? How can we help them reduce that? How can we create a more efficient route for their trucks to follow so that they can make sure that the truck can do that in the least amount of time and spend the least amount of money? These are all things we're looking at as we fulfill our mission to end waste in a municipal government context. So we're all kind of government people. We've all either worked in government or have worked closely with government in various previous occupations. We think about partnering with government, I think, differently than a lot of companies. We very much want to partner with them and present ourselves and position ourselves as a really trusted ally in working with them to fulfill their mission, which is to protect quality of life and citizen health in cities. So there's a really good alignment there. In the future, I think you'll see many more companies, many more B Corps, start to be attracted to the municipal government or the government ecosystem in general, because what B Corps allow is they allow a great alignment between the public sector mission and the company's mission. And we're really seeing that with Rubicon Smart City. So there's a lot of things in our future that we're excited about, but the opportunity as a kind of startup within a larger company to work with Geekdom and work with the city on this incubation of this new technology has been transformative for us.
Yeah, that's so great to hear. I mean, that's what the residency program is all about, right? It's about you guys really becoming partners with this department in the city, them guiding you as the subject matter experts in what they do day to day, so that what you're building is truly solving the problem, right? And that you're really getting that inside information and they're able to give that to you as well, and really feel like the needs are being met that are really the needs out there. So it's super, super important and awesome to hear. I guess on that, because you were just kind of talking about future stuff, but the future of waste management from y'all's perspective, like what does that even look like? Because y'all are obviously at the forefront of that. So what is the future of waste management to Rubicon and y'all's teams?
Sure. So I want to let Tyler come in because I'm sure he's got some thoughts on it. He's been in the industry a while as well. I think the simplest way to think about it is to use a rubric that everybody knows, which is reduce, reuse, and recycle. So the future of waste management is going to be more of all of those things. So reduce is all about reducing the amount of waste that you send to landfill, right? And there's a bunch of really interesting strategies that are taking off across the US right now, of which the city of San Antonio is one pioneer. And I'll just mention one of those, which is separating organic waste and food waste and taking that and making sure that that isn't part of the stream that goes to landfill. Okay. If we can scale that up across the all the cities in the US, we're going to remove 30% or so of the waste volume that is going and weight that is going to landfill. So separating organics is a massive, massive step in reducing the amount of waste that we send to landfill. And it's something that the city of San Antonio has been a pioneer on. My own city in New York, where I live, has also, the city has developed a curbside organics collection program. The city of Cambridge, Massachusetts, has a very successful program that has been a model for a lot of cities. There's so much more to be done here to really nail that first R, reduction, right? Reuse is the second one. It's a very interesting area. And there's been a ton of work being done there as well. And I'll just give a couple of examples. Again, city of San Antonio has been a leader on this, but lots of cities are now beginning to actually serve as a go-between between people who have excess goods and folks that might want those goods. So the city is actually providing that missing link. And we see this, for example, in the city of San Francisco, which for years has had basically a big warehouse where folks that have things that they want to give away that they don't want anymore can bring there. They can donate. The city can help to make sure that those things are categorized correctly. And then artists come in there and use those materials. They sort through those materials to be raw material for their art. It's a great example of the type of reuse that we're going to see scaled up all across the country in the future. Every time we have one of those reuse cycles, right, we keep that material out of landfill, and it really helps the planet. And then recycling is the last one, where we're going to see an expansion of recycling. The market has been really bad, as we discussed. It's going to come back. We're going to develop better ways of processing that recycling in the U.S. here at home. And we're also going to see, and we already have seen, a significant uptick in companies that are using those recyclable materials as inputs for their business. And as a consumer, as a citizen, if you prioritize your choices to make sure you're looking for products and you're purchasing products that are made with recycled goods, that helps, because that creates the demand that's ultimately gonna suck up that excess supply of recycled goods that we have, of recyclables that we have in America right now. So there's something you can do kind of right there at home, is prioritize that that label and looking for those recycled goods. And all those 3 R's to say, if we can do all those things, what we're going to be creating is something called a circular economy. We're actually, right now, as we produce those goods and as they get used, right now, if you think about it as a circle, they're escaping the circle when they're going to landfill, because they just sit there. They sit there in the landfill. They don't even decompose. They sit there, they create methane, and that methane is 4 times more powerful than CO2. So it has 4 times the impact on climate change, on greenhouse gas emissions, that a single ton of carbon dioxide does. And that all comes from landfills. So we want to close that loop. We want to make sure that through reduction, through reuse, and through recycling, that loop gets closed, so that all those same things that might have gone to landfill can go back into the stream and then become raw inputs for producers to produce new goods. That circular economy is going to be very powerful. It's going to be very remunerative for companies. A lot of people are going to make a lot of money in this industry because as we close that loop, and it's going to position the U.S. for the 22nd century, where we're going to be looking off planet. We're going to be looking towards how we can create a sustainable world of 8-9 billion people, and the circular economy is the key to that. So that's kind of what the future, I think, portends for waste management, and where we hope to position our technology to help cities and other folks make that journey. And Tyler, did I miss anything? Is there anything else you want to?
Yeah, no, you did great. You got us all the way to the 22nd century. So I mean, I think you covered a lot of the bases. I would just add 2 things, and you kind of hit on one of them. But the first in my mind is kind of what we're focusing on in San Antonio, but and you alluded to it as well, Leslie. At the end of the day, it comes down to the point of collection. So the moment something enters a container, so the moment you put something into trash or recycling at your own home, and then again, the moment that's put into a communal dumpster or a communal receptacle like the hopper of a waste vehicle, like the idea of stopping it before it becomes an issue is the direction we're going. There's a lot of technology out there that's monitoring. Maybe not necessarily what's going into a container yet, but it'll get there. There's certainly technology that is out there that monitors container levels and things of that nature, whether that's a recycling bin or a waste bin. But for me, it comes down to the point of collection. And then Connor kind of alluded to it, but if you are in the industry, the notion of China cutting off our ability to give our recyclable material to them is obviously one that everyone knows if you're in industry. At the end of the day, as it pertains to that, it comes down to the infrastructure that's in the U.S. 5-10 years ago, it was limited. There is now a demand for infrastructure because of all of this volume that's created. Those who have the ability to create infrastructure it is a great business endeavor. Like there is no future in the US where recycling is not a thing. And so to have the ability for us to now, at this point with advanced technology, start developing these facilities, these MRFs, all of these other PCR plants, all of these ideas that are taking material out of the landfill into a recyclable or back into an economy. And as Connor said, there are companies out there. There's lots of companies that do a great job of reusing, and it's marketed, and there's research behind that. There is a demand for it already, and the more that consumers go out there and pick the option off the shelf that says that this packaging or this bottle was made of 50+% recycled material, there's only going to be an increased demand for that. So for me, while we remain in the 21st century, it comes down to the point of collection, and then just the improved infrastructure around recycling, more so than anything solid waste or landfill related.
Yeah, that all makes a ton of sense. Very cool. And so that also, I feel like for me, internalizing that, I'm like, okay, Leslie, like this means the responsibility really is on you. Cause I feel like a lot of times some people are like, oh, well, you know, I mean, what is recycling these few bottles or cans gonna really do, right? Like for me as an individual at home, it's like, well, it does a lot because that's where it starts, right? Like where you put your waste, that's the whole cycle begins there. So that's sticking in my mind right now as y'all are speaking about that. And then, yeah, I think that this is also a great segue, Tyler, for you to maybe give us a little bit more information about the very specific new technology you're working on during the residency. So this waste contamination detection tool. So that's what you guys are working on with the City of San Antonio's Solid Waste Department. So if you want to tell everyone a little bit more about how you guys have approached the challenge and kind of how the product itself is kind of shaping up to be, and just give us some insight, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, this is something near and dear to not just our team on the Smart City, but the entire company, right? So the ability to find ways to truly impact change in the environmental community, right? That's not something that every company has the ability to do, and this tool we really feel like gives us that platform. So essentially what we have in place in San Antonio today is two pieces of hardware. One of them is again, a computer built by our R&D team that effectively just sits in the cab of the truck. It doesn't require any interaction from the driver. It's the brains of the operation, right? And I'll get into that a little bit here in a second, but it's tethered to a camera that's positioned in the hopper. And for those who don't know, the hopper is basically just where the trash gets dumped into, or the recyclable or the organics gets dumped into by the truck. That big arm that comes in and dumps the can, that's the hopper. So it's facing there. And that's just important to state because, you know, particularly in the smart city community, there is a lot of focus on privacy, community privacy, resident privacy. These cameras are solely focused on what's in the hopper. It has no view out into the community, and that frankly, what's out in the community has no importance to us at Rubicon as well. So it is important to state that the angle of the camera is in the hopper, and its sole focus is looking at what goes into that. And so I'll dig into the beauty and the real nuance of this computer, and you know why it's special and why we think it's the future of technology in the waste industry, right? So what's really cool about the technology is that it employs edge computing. And for those who are unfamiliar what that is, I'm going to do a little bit roundabout way of explaining that. So edge computing is used on autonomous vehicles. And the reason is that you use cloud computing, right? So everyone kind of has an idea now of cloud computing is basically you're looking at something, it's getting sent to a server, the brain power on that server is making a decision and then sending that information back to the device. Well, in a car, you know, it's looking at, you know, dozens or if not hundreds of signals at one time. How far is the car in front of me? The lines on the road, the speed limit, stoplights, things like that. Obviously, you can't wait for information to go to a server and then get sent back to you. So it has to make a decision in real time. And so that's what edge computing is doing. It's making a decision on the device based on what an optical sensor or a camera in our place is looking at. And so we've asked our camera to look for very specific things. It's looking the entire time the truck is on, right? So there's, you know, thousands of tips going in there, and, you know, 958 of those are probably perfect. but there's going to be 42 where the camera and the device say something's not right there. There's a plastic bag in there, and it shouldn't be. It should just be the organic stream. So it should be brush and things like that, right? So, or there's a plastic bottle in there, or there's a glass bottle. So it's only looking for those images. And when it sees one, it's going to capture a picture of it, flag it for the city with a geo position, right? So the coordinates effectively. And then it's going to highlight that particular part of the image that it's called out. And in the future, it's going to basically say, we notice that there is a plastic bag, so the actual material type at X location. And then, I'll dive into here in a minute how that's helpful when you're thinking about it in the grand scheme of an entire city. But effectively, that's what the technology that is employed in the city of San Antonio is doing right now. It's not requiring any interaction from the driver. Basically, the driver gets into his cab, he turns on the vehicle, and he drives. And all of this data is being collected by the camera and the computer device, and then being sent back to, again, this portal for city staff to review and digest and tackle and analyze based on what they're looking to do with it. And just to kind of describe to those who are unfamiliar why this is important, the way this would have to happen today is one of two ways. The first is what we call an on-foot audit. And the city of San Antonio does this, and it's incredibly important for cities to do this. But effectively, what an on-foot audit is it's exactly what it sounds like. There are people who go out on their feet and walk a portion of a solid waste route. And a solid waste route, depending on your city, could be 600 stops to 1,500 stops, right? So they can vary in size, but nonetheless, it's not something that a person is going to be able to walk the entirety of. And so they'll walk, 100 stops of this, and they're just going to tip open the can and see, did this person put anything in their recycling or their organics that shouldn't be in there? And so you can imagine that to cover an entire city would be quite labor intensive and also take up a lot of time. And so the idea of a smart city is using what you have to do more. So we're simply using your existing vehicles that are already running these routes to do what these on-foot auditors are being tasked to do over the course of, weeks and months. We're doing it in a single week because a vehicle will hit every house in 1 week. Just the way the cities have these routes set up, sometimes 2 weeks if it's a bi-weekly collection, right? And so that's the idea behind what a smart city is. And, one of the big things that the city of San Antonio, even outside of the scope of our project is really focused on, and every city is the safety of their drivers. So before the technology in the trucks, the drivers were being forced to look using an existing camera that's in their hopper to see what's coming in. So again, these guys are driving, 8 hours a day, sometimes more, looking through, 1,000+ bins every single day. That's a lot of work outside of just focusing on making sure they're operating their vehicle safety and doing their job at hand. So if we can take one piece away from them that they're being asked to do, again, now we're making their jobs easier. Hopefully the operation is being run more smoothly, right? And so at the end of the day, we're trying to tackle this ending waste in multiple facets. And then there's a level of education that really comes into it, right? So over the course of time, enough data will be collected where the city has a very good understanding of particularly what times of years do we see spikes in contamination, around Super Bowl, March Madness, the holidays, right? Are there particular times where we need to really make sure we're getting engagement from our citizens to do their best? Do we need to get out education material? Are there particular neighborhoods or regions in the city that we should go back through and make sure they understand what should go in what container, what should go in there? And so all of this data is being used to do a myriad of things, but at the end of the day, it's just making sure we have a clean stream. And we've already spoke about why that's so important.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much for telling everyone a little bit more about the really cool technology you guys are working on here. I'm so excited for them to all see it on Tuesday, the 29th, because I've gotten to see the progress of it and see, all the snapshots of what that camera's collecting and kind of what the application itself is coming up to look like. So it's awesome. It's so cool. I never thought waste management would be so interesting and fascinating and exciting, but it is. It's very, very cool. So yeah, as we're kind of getting closer to the end of our hour, it looks like we did have a couple questions that came through. So one of them is, what are the hard metrics that you present to, say, like a city council, that Rubicon solutions are a good thing to try after a year of implementation has been successful? So is it, are they responding to like how much money has been saved, or like what are kind of those metrics that you guys are trying to help them track, or are tracking to really show kind of that return on investment and value that the type of technology you're building is giving to a city?
Sure. So Tyler actually, I think maybe can give some specific examples from some of the cities he's working with. But in general, ROI is everything. So remember what I said about how expensive it is to collect the waste in most cities. The key thing that we want to be measured on, and that I think city councils and I think the folks that we work with are looking for, is how can we reduce the amount of money that it takes to do this operation. And I think Tyler, I'll throw it to you. You can add some examples. I would add one other thing, which is sustainability metrics are also really important drivers, as are customer service metrics. So remember, customer service is kind of the mission of the city. So a lot of cities are looking for ways that they can improve that, whether that's a reduction in 311 calls, right? Or whether that's fewer citizens having to call in to say that their can wasn't out. Whatever it is those are some of the things, those kind of customer service metrics that I think city councils are really looking for. Tyler, do you want to maybe give a few specific examples?
Yeah, for sure. And I will be cautious to not just given the platform that we're in to not name any particular cities, but we have a number of reports that basically back this up. When we're talking about efficiency, one of the key ways that you can drive efficiency particularly in a solid waste operation is what we call a fleet optimization, right? And one of the beautiful things about our technology is it gives really, really detailed and granular level information about how an operation is running. One of the things that fleet folks, and particularly people in solid waste, are keen about is what they call the balance of their routes. Are drivers having to work extra hard on a Wednesday, but for some reason their Thursdays are almost non-existent, right? So is there a way that we can find to make it balanced across a 5-week operation or 6-week, whatever the city has? Those typically see 6 figures, depending on the size of the city, $100,000 to sometimes upwards of $350,000 to $450,000 in savings, and that's annually, right? So you do it once, and the idea is you shouldn't have to do it again for a while if you're maintaining it. So that's every single year you should be realizing a savings of that amount of money. And so that's one of the really key ways that we work with cities once they've had the technology for a little bit and we have this really good understanding of how they're operating. Another way is, and you heard Connor speak about it earlier, these vehicles are wildly expensive. They're 350, sometimes more, thousands of dollars. And they don't have a great lifespan. They're being really hardly worked. They're driving sometimes 100+ miles every single day in traffic, in communities constantly starting and stopping, right? And so, their lifespans aren't always that great. Sometimes, cities are turning them over after 3 or 4 years. And that's a big investment when we are talking about particularly the size of San Antonio. And I don't necessarily know the size of the fleet, but, they're in the upper echelon of fleet sizes. So it's a really big investment. And so finding ways to elongate that lifespan, make it so that we can find that there's going to be an issue before there's actually an issue. We all have the check engine lights that come on in our car. And again, we take it to an AutoZone or a repair shop, and they plug a device in there that basically says, oh, your cylinder's misfiring. Well, we have a piece of technology that allows cities to understand, hey, something's not running correctly. Let's bring it into the shop and diagnose it before it becomes something catastrophic, something that pulls this vehicle off the road for months. Let's take it off the road for 3 days instead of 3 months. All right. And so that's a big savings cost as well. One, just from not having that truck on the road, right? You have capital invested in something that's not working. Additionally, in the repair cost as well. So, you know, without again diving into particular cities, those are the two ways that we really find have real value add just right out of the gate in terms of an ROI standpoint. And then again, obviously, there's a lot of environmental savings, particularly around an optimization. We're taking thousands, if not tens of thousands of pounds of CO2 out of the environment, depending on the city. And again, digitizing your operations, removing the amount of paper you're using, there's an environmental savings and a real economic savings in that as well, particularly when you look at it on a year-over-year basis. So again, Connor, if you'd like to add on to that, be my guest. I wanted to be a little cautious again about the privacy of our cities.
No, that's perfect. I also just wanted to add one more thing, which is kind of timely on that, which is I think a lot of councils and mayors right now are looking for how to run these operations remotely in the middle of COVID. So sanitation workers have been on the front lines. They're essential workers. And while some of us have been working from home, sanitation workers across the country have been out every day picking up the trash. And as a result, they've been exposed, you know, and you know, it's solid waste is already a very dangerous occupation, and these solid waste workers have been out there every day. So cities across the country have been hit hard by COVID, and they've lost a bunch of their workers because of COVID or because they were exposed to somebody who's had COVID. So the ability of a software like ours to enable as much as possible clerks, dispatchers, supervisors, others to work from home, yet still ensure that the operation is continuing, make changes on the fly, change up routes. One of the things we've seen is tonnages in the residential space have gone way up because people are ordering more things directly to their home. So the amount of recyclables, the amount of garbage is much higher, and that's throwing off some of the route calculations and estimates that folks have been relying on. So one of the key things that I think folks are looking for now, cities are looking for now, is how do we get a digital operation? How do we digitize this whole operation to make it safer, to make it cleaner, and to make it more efficient, so we can more easily handle our operation during a time like COVID?
Yeah, that's another.
It's a great point, Connor.
Yeah, for sure. Very cool. So I guess to kind of close us out today, we had one question from someone who says they would love to be a part of this. So how can local businesses become a part of this? But it's also something we like to do at the end of our programming too, is to just ask you all, like, what can we as the Geekdom community or the community at large be doing to connect with Rubicon, to support what you guys are doing, that mission to end waste, all of it. What can we do to help you? How can we get connected with Rubicon?
Yeah, so I'll speak to a little bit of that, and Connor may be able to add some. But just from a Geekdom standpoint, I think the platform you have given the Smart City team in particular has been second to none. And you've had a chance to work with Katie Kinnear in our office as well. I think she would echo these sentiments. It's been a pleasure, and there's certainly more to come in the next week or two. So we're incredibly excited about what's left. But I hope that this is something that we can continue to work on with you guys in the future. If able, you guys have a very well-run operation that's afforded us new visitors and new eyes from places we wouldn't have otherwise been able to achieve. So just in that alone, I think we are grateful. And for those in the community, like I said, if you're in a city, the Rubicon Smart City team is always eager to help and speak to you on whether it's something that we can do within your recycling operation or your broader waste collection operation. And then again, if you're a small business, right, you don't have to be a Walmart. Connor spoke about the Fortune 500s. We work with small businesses every day, mom and pop shops on the commercial side of the company. They are as focused on that as they are with Walmart. So if that is something you're interested in, Rubicon.com. Very simple to log on and learn more about us, and obviously reach out through there as well if you're interested in learning more from a business standpoint. But I do want to make it known that we are grateful for Geekdom and everything you've done, Leslie, and your team from a promotional standpoint and a social media standpoint. It's really great.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And Ian, I think I'm going to also do a personal kind of call to action out to folks to remind them from this conversation. Again, one of my biggest internal takeaways is that every time you decide where you're putting your waste, it does matter. It really matters because that's where it starts. So get yourself educated. There's plenty of resources out there, especially at the city. I know if you go to the solid waste website, there are tons of resources always on there to get you aware of what you can put in the recycling bin. You know, you can order yourself a green bin if you don't have one, if you want to start with organics and all of that good stuff. So many cool things to come. And also, everyone, please register to attend the residency demo day. It's on Tuesday, September 29th. So coming up in about 2 weeks-ish, a week and a half-ish. And it'll be at 7 p.m. It'll be live streamed through the CivTechSA Facebook and through the Geekdom YouTube channel and everything. We're going to get it out there to as many folks as possible. And it will be available after the fact too. So if you can't come to the live watch party or tune into the live watch party, we can certainly share it afterwards with everyone. And you can all see the awesome work the Smart City team has been doing here in San Antonio. So thank you again so much, Tyler and Connor, and thank you for everyone who tuned in. We look forward to seeing you all on the 29th.
Thank you so much, Leslie. Thanks, everyone.